Get the hell out of my lobby. This gilded cage wasn't built for gutter trash like you." Those words weren't a careless slip of the tongue. They were a declaration of war. Blunt, cold, and meticulously memorized. A mantra of exclusion spoken with the chilling confidence of a man who believed he was God within these four walls. Julian Croft, the impeccably dressed manager of the Azure Spire Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago, stood behind the polished mahogany front desk, his arms folded like a fortress gate. His judgmental eyes, the color of a winter sky, were fixed on her, stripping her down piece by piece. He didn't whisper. He didn't have the decency to hide his contempt. He boomed his verdict loud enough for every soul in the cavernous, opulent lobby to hear, turning them all into unwilling jurors in a trial she never asked for. He scanned her up and down, this woman of color in a simple, unassuming outfit, and in the space of a single heartbeat, he decided she was filth. She didn't belong in his pristine, luxury establishment. What he didn't know, what his towering arrogance made it impossible for him to even conceive, was that in exactly 5 minutes, the woman standing before him would not just be a guest, she would be his executioner, and she was about to fire him and his entire sycophantic staff right here in this lobby, the very stage he had chosen for her public humiliation. Before we even dive into the delicious karmic justice of this unbelievable story, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single, satisfying second of what's about to unfold. The heavy glass doors of the Azure Spire swung open with a silent, expensive sigh. A young woman entered, her presence a quiet contradiction to the lobby's loud display of wealth. She was dressed in extreme simplicity, a plain white blouse, well-worn but clean trousers, and unremarkable flat shoes. There was no designer bag slung over her shoulder, no flashy jewelry dripping from her wrists or neck. Yet, with each step she took across the gleaming marble floor, she radiated an absolute, unshakable confidence. It was a powerful, magnetic aura that made heads turn, not once, but twice, a silent question forming on the lips of the wealthy patrons. This was Isabella "Izzy" Rossi, the formidable, ghost-like CEO behind the entire prestigious Celestial Hospitality empire, the parent company of the Azure Spire. But today, she had left her title, her reputation, and her fortune locked away. She was just a woman, a test, an instrument of truth. She approached the front desk with a slow, deliberate grace, her eyes taking in every detail. As she neared, the skeptical, dismissive gazes of the receptionists snapped toward her like magnets repelling a foreign object. At the center of this hostile welcome stood Julian Croft, handsome in a cruel, sculpted way, his face a mask of icy pride. He was flanked by his 2 loyal disciples, Tiffany Vance, a young woman whose ambition was as sharp and cold as her stilettos, and Caleb Finch, a junior clerk who watched the world from behind a shield of nervous deference. When Isabella stopped at the desk, an oppressive, unnatural silence fell over the immediate area, a pocket of dead air in the bustling lobby. She spoke, and her voice, though calm and polite, was as clear and resonant as a crystal bell. "I have a reservation for the penthouse suite. The name is Isabella Rossi." Julian didn't answer right away. His eyes performed a slow, deliberate crawl over her body, an inspection filled with such blatant contempt it was a physical violation. Other guests began to notice the strange tableau. Conversations hushed, and curious, speculative glances settled on Isabella and the stony-faced receptionists. He leaned forward, propping himself on his elbows, his tone a venomous whisper designed to be overheard. "Are you absolutely sure you're in the right place, ma'am? The penthouse suite, well, it isn't for people like you." Those 3 words, "people like you," were the spark. A murmur of gossip ignited and spread like wildfire across the lobby. Tiffany Vance, standing beside Julian, allowed a small, derisive smirk to curl her lips. Caleb Finch, on the other hand, suddenly became intensely fascinated by his computer screen, his shoulders hunched in a desperate attempt to become invisible. Though the silence that followed Julian's words lasted mere seconds, to Isabella, it felt like an eternity. It was a plunge back into a past she thought she had conquered. She tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes meeting Julian's without a single flicker of fear or intimidation. There was only calm resolve and a defiant confidence that seemed to throw him off balance. "Perhaps you ought to check your system before you say something you'll regret," she replied, her tone still gentle, but now laced with a thread of pure steel. Julian let out a short, mocking chuckle. "Oh, there's no need to check. I know my clientele. I curate it personally, and it's abundantly clear to me that you are not one of them." His declaration was a final judgment, and it silenced the lobby completely. Isabella remained silent, her gaze drifting for a moment, noting Tiffany's contemptuous expression and Caleb's deferential, fearful glance toward his boss. A few of the watching guests began to look uncomfortable. Some, sensing a viral moment in the making, discreetly pulled out their phones and began to record. Isabella could feel the tension ratcheting up, a palpable thing in the air. But she did not waver. After letting the silence stretch, she spoke again, each word now honed to an icy point. "I am going to suggest that you pull up my reservation one last time. If you don't, I promise you, you will regret those words for the rest of your professional life." Julian stood unmoved, his arms still crossed, his eyes throwing a challenge. "I have no reason to. I think you should leave now, before we're forced to call security." Isabella didn't raise her voice. She didn't launch into a frantic defense. Instead, she slowly retrieved her phone from her pocket, her gaze never once breaking from Julian's. "Mr. Croft," she said, her voice clear and carrying, "you have just made the single biggest mistake of your entire career." Her measured, prophetic words seemed to freeze the very air in the lobby. The other guests watched in absolute silence, uncertain of what would happen next. But they all understood one thing with sudden, shocking clarity. The unassuming woman standing before them was not to be underestimated. In a far corner of the lobby, Harper Monroe, a well-known and influential travel blogger, was already capturing the entire scene on her camera. Whispering to her friend and cameraman, Leo Maxwell, she said, "Keep rolling, Leo. I think we're witnessing something far bigger than a simple misunderstanding at the check-in desk." Little did she know, those whispered words would soon prove to be the understatement of the year. The woman standing at the desk didn't just have a reservation for the penthouse. She owned the penthouse. She owned the lobby. She owned the entire Azure Spire chain. And in just a few short minutes, those who had dared to demean and humiliate her were about to pay the ultimate price with their careers. Isabella remained standing, her cold, unwavering gaze locked on Julian, the air between them growing denser, heavier, and more suffocating with every passing second. The brilliant light from the massive crystal chandelier above washed faintly across Julian Croft's face, accentuating the smug irritation etched into his handsome features. Isabella knew she didn't need to raise her voice or create a scene. Her powerful, accusatory silence was more than enough to unnerve him, to let his own poison do the work. Finally, to shatter the oppressive quiet that he himself had created, Isabella slowly set her phone down on the marble countertop. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple, compact leather wallet. With a deliberate, almost theatrical slowness, she withdrew a sleek, matte black credit card. Her name, Isabella Rossi, was embossed in gleaming silver letters. Alongside it, she placed a simple but elegantly designed ID. Julian looked at the two items as if they were alien artifacts that had just fallen from the sky. With a theatrical sigh of reluctance, he took them, suspicion and malicious doubt written all over his face. He began to scrutinize every letter on the card and the ID, taking far longer than necessary, his intent to prolong her humiliation obvious to everyone watching. "Miss Rossi, is it?" Julian drawled, deliberately stretching out her last name as though it were a punchline to a bad joke. "I'm sorry, but I don't recall seeing this name on our VIP list." Another wave of murmurs swept through the lobby, louder and more pointed this time, as the captivated guests watched the scene unfold. Seizing the moment to demonstrate his blind loyalty to his boss, Caleb Finch, still hovering just behind Julian, spoke up. "Mr. Croft, perhaps we should double-check our records," he said, his tone laced with a dramatic, insincere concern. Before Julian could respond, Caleb snatched the card from his hand with a brusque, arrogant flourish. "This card, it looks suspicious." Julian gave a cold, triumphant smile and turned his icy gaze back to Isabella. "You understand, this is just standard procedure. Guest security is our absolute highest priority." Before he could finish the condescending sentence, Tiffany Vance lifted her phone to the walkie-talkie clipped to her belt and called out, her voice sharp and loud enough for all to hear. "Security to the front desk, immediately. We have a guest requiring urgent ID verification." All eyes, now a mixture of pity, disgust, and morbid curiosity, snapped back to Isabella. Some guests shook their heads in silent disapproval, but didn't dare to intervene. Harper Monroe continued filming, her face a mask of outraged disbelief at the blatant, systemic injustice playing out before her lens. Meanwhile, Caleb carried Isabella's precious black credit card over to a small, heavy-duty safe built into the reception desk. With a crisp, definitive click, he opened it, placed the card inside, and locked it again. Each gesture was carefully staged for maximum humiliation. "We'll need to retain this card for verification," he announced to the lobby at large. "It's our anti-fraud policy here at the Azure Spire Grand." Isabella fixed Caleb with a steely, unblinking stare, her volcanic anger perfectly controlled beneath a calm, glacial exterior. She stepped closer to the desk and spoke, her voice low, but every single word was perfectly audible. "Consider this your final warning, Caleb. You will pay dearly for that decision." Caleb blinked, momentarily stunned by her intensity, but he quickly recovered his arrogant posture, his chin raised in defiance. "I'll be sure to remember your warning, Miss Rossi, but as of right now you have absolutely no authority to threaten me." At that exact moment, a team of burly security officers entered the lobby and formed a menacing line behind Isabella, awaiting Julian's orders. The tension peaked as Julian raised his hand, preparing to signal them forward. "Miss Rossi, you can step outside now, or we will be forced to take more drastic measures. This is your final warning." But instead of backing down, instead of showing a single shred of fear, Isabella offered a faint, icy smile, a smile as sharp and as cold as a razor blade. Her gaze swept over Tiffany and Caleb before finally settling on Julian's smug, triumphant face. "You will all regret this. Don't say I didn't warn you." Each word landed like a prophecy, a declaration of the biblical storm that was about to break over their heads. Yet Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb, blinded by their own prejudice and drunk on their petty power, didn't realize they had just unlocked the door to their own damnation. Isabella Rossi was no ordinary guest. She was the true, unseen power behind the entire celestial hospitality empire they so arrogantly served. As Isabella stood in silent, powerful command, Harper and her friend Leo continued their live stream. Harper's voice trembled with a righteous, furious anger. Everyone, We are witnessing a shockingly humiliating and discriminatory scene at Chicago's Azure Spire Grand Hotel. Share this right now. Tell everyone you know. No one can be allowed to let this slide." And just like that, the seeds of a massive public outrage were sown, ready to erupt into a hurricane that would sweep away the arrogant, prejudiced few who had dared to stand in Isabella Rossi's way. The moment Isabella's chilling warning rang out, Harper Monroe glanced at her companion and assistant, Leo Maxwell. Neither of them could believe the sheer audacity of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just poor customer service. This was a public shaming, a brutal exercise in classist cruelty. Harper gave Leo a subtle, urgent signal to keep recording, no matter what. He understood immediately, raising his phone and adjusting the frame to capture the entire, tense panorama of the Azure Spire lobby. The stage was now set for a truly shocking event. Harper quickly tapped the Go Live button on her social media feed. She took a deep, steadying breath and began speaking, her voice infused with just enough raw emotion to convey the electrifying tension and the gross injustice that was unfolding. "Everyone, Leo and I are here at the Azure Spire Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago, and we are witnessing a serious, disgusting incident of prejudice and discrimination, live on camera. The woman you see standing there, with a calm and undeniable presence, has been treated in the most insulting and degrading way imaginable by this hotel's management." In an instant, the live stream's view count exploded. Comments began to flood in. Angry emojis, shocked faces, and thumbs-down icons popped up one after another. Harper swung the camera to focus on Julian Croft, Tiffany Vance, and Caleb Finch, who stood behind the desk with their smug, contemptuous expressions still firmly in place. Caleb, realizing he was now on camera for a rapidly growing audience, didn't back down. He smirked, leaning forward and shouting directly into the lens, "Go ahead and film all you want. We're just following protocol to protect our genuine guests from fraudsters." Julian crossed his arms, a look of immense pride on his face at Caleb's boldness. He then turned back to Isabella and amplified the insult tenfold. "You need to face reality, Miss Rossi. This hotel is for the right class of people, and unfortunately for you, you're not one of them." Guests around the lobby froze, watching in a state of stunned, horrified silence. Some began to whisper their disapproval. Others just looked bewildered. This was not the kind of drama they expected to witness at a luxury five-star hotel like the Azure Spire. Meanwhile, Harper and Leo's viewer count had surged from hundreds into the tens of thousands. The comment section was a waterfall of fury. "Unbelievable! A world-famous hotel acting like this? She's so composed, I would have lost my mind by now. Share this everywhere, people. Blow this up." Harper quickly scanned a few of the comments, her eyes widening. She whispered to Leo, "Pan to the safe, Leo. They've locked her credit card inside the safe." Leo complied instantly, framing the cold, imposing steel safe beneath the desk, a stark and powerful symbol of the injustice being perpetrated. He narrated clearly into the live stream, his voice shaking with indignation. "Look at this, everyone. They have confiscated this guest's credit card without any valid reason, locking it away as if she's a common criminal, and she's standing there facing it all with this incredible, unbelievable poise. We can't believe what's happening right now." The tension in the lobby ratcheted up another notch. A middle-aged man standing nearby, dressed in an expensive suit, finally stepped forward and spoke quietly, but still well within the range of Leo's microphone. "Mr. Croft, perhaps you should stop. This is going to seriously damage the hotel's reputation." Julian waved him off dismissively, his eyes glittering with arrogance. "I know exactly what I'm doing. If she were innocent, she wouldn't be standing here arguing." Isabella heard every single cutting remark, but she remained ice-cold and utterly composed, a statue of defiance, letting their own vile actions become the evidence that would condemn them. Inside, though, her mind was a whirlwind of cold, calculated fury as she plotted her next devastating move. Harper refocused the camera on Isabella, her voice now trembling with both anger and profound admiration. "Everyone, look at this woman. Despite being publicly humiliated, accused of fraud, and threatened by security, she has not lost her composure for a single second. I don't know who she is, but I am absolutely certain that we are witnessing someone truly extraordinary, someone with an unmatched inner strength." Suddenly, a highlighted comment flashed across the screen, and Leo read it aloud, his voice cracking with shock. "Wait, I recognize her. That's Isabella Rossi. She's the CEO of Celestial Hospitality. She owns this entire hotel chain." Harper and Leo stared at each other, their jaws dropping in utter astonishment. The revelation ignited the live stream like a bolt of lightning. The share count soared into the stratosphere, and thousands of new comments poured in every second. "Oh my God, they just humiliated their own CEO. Those employees' careers are toast, absolutely finished. We are watching history being made in real time, people." Regaining her composure, Harper addressed her massive, captivated audience with newfound authority. "Breaking news, everyone. The woman you are seeing is Isabella Rossi, the owner of the Azure Spire Grand Hotel chain. Share this live stream now. This truth needs to be exposed to the entire world." In the lobby, as the news began to ripple through the crowd via their own phones, expressions shifted from skepticism to pure horror. Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb finally began to realize the true, cataclysmic magnitude of their mistake. They hadn't just made a small error in judgment. They had ignited a raging inferno that was about to sweep away everything they had ever built. While the shocked whispers and horrified glances still swirled around her, Isabella Rossi stood perfectly still. For a brief, unguarded moment, her eyes flickered with something unspoken, a deep and ancient pain. Harper Monroe's words, "That woman is Isabella Rossi, the owner of the Celestial Hospitality Empire," echoed in her mind. But Isabella wasn't in the opulent lobby of the Azure Spire anymore. She was pulled back into a memory she thought she had buried under a mountain of success. A memory sealed in ice and shame. In that instant, time rewound more than a decade to a desolate, forgotten suburb outside Atlanta. On a bitter winter's night, a heavy, wet snow blanketed the icy streets, muffling the world in a suffocating white silence. Isabella, barely in her 20s and fresh out of college, carried a dream that burned so brightly it felt like a fever in her soul. The dream of building her own business. Yet at that moment, her dream felt impossibly, cruelly distant. She was just an unknown young woman with no fame, no influence, and, most painfully, not deemed worthy of even the cheapest room in a run-down motel. She remembered that night with a clarity that still stole her breath. Her old, beat-up car had finally stalled in the freezing cold, its engine giving a final, pathetic cough. Isabella had trudged for what felt like miles through the blizzard to a tiny, flickering light, a roadside inn. She had begged the man at the desk for a room, any room. The receptionist's cold, dead-eyed contempt cut deeper into her soul than the freezing wind. "I'm sorry, but we don't accept guests like you," he had sneered, his eyes raking over her worn coat and shivering frame with blatant disdain. "Guests like me?" Isabella had asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of cold, desperation, and outrage. "You know exactly what I mean," he replied, turning his back on her. A final, brutal dismissal that left her shivering in a vortex of shame. That night, Isabella huddled in the front seat of her dead car, silent tears freezing on her cheeks. The isolation, the abandonment, the searing humiliation. They left a scar on her soul that she knew would never fully fade. But that pain also ignited a fierce, unquenchable determination in her heart. On that frigid, lonely night, she made a solemn vow to herself. She would never again be powerless, and she would never, ever allow another human being to endure the kind of pain she felt. She promised herself that if she ever had the power to change things, she would create places where every single person, rich or poor, regardless of their appearance, would be treated with absolute, unconditional respect. And now, standing here, in the luxurious lobby of the Azure Spire Grand Hotel, the very heart of the empire she had bled and sacrificed to build, that bitter memory surged back with the force of a tidal wave. But this time, she was no longer the helpless, shivering girl in the snow. She was Isabella Rossi, the powerful CEO of one of America's most prestigious hotel chains, armed with the strength to shatter the present and redefine the future. Yet standing before her, Julian Croft, Tiffany Vance, and Caleb Finch were reenacting her worst nightmare, speaking the same hateful lines from a script written decades ago. Their words and their contemptuous stares cut into that old wound as sharply as any knife. Caleb, with a smug smirk, deliberately raised his voice for all to hear. "Stop the theatrics. This place isn't for people who are pretending to be wealthy." Tiffany stood nearby, arms crossed, her cold, satisfied smile more chilling than any spoken insult. Meanwhile, Julian Croft reveled in his perverse display of power, standing tall and proud, as if to announce to the world, "I am in control here. I am the gatekeeper." But Isabella knew something he didn't. True power doesn't lie in cruel words or puffed-up arrogance. True power is the ability to face down injustice and refuse to bow. She had learned that power through tears and lonely, icy nights in a broken-down car, and today she would use it to end a legacy of prejudice and systemic unfairness. Isabella's gaze sharpened with a diamond-hard resolve. She lifted her chin, letting the brilliant light of the chandelier illuminate her determined face. In a voice as calm as it was unyielding, she declared, "Julian, Caleb, Tiffany, you picked the wrong person to insult today. What is happening right here, right now, will be the start of something monumental. I promise you that." Harper continued filming, her camera locked on Isabella as thousands upon thousands of people watched the live stream, their own hearts pounding. They all felt it. Isabella Rossi wasn't just standing up for herself. She was standing up for every single person who had ever been judged, dismissed, or made to feel small. In that moment, Isabella became more than a woman. She became a symbol of resistance against discrimination, a warrior against unfairness, and the thousands of people watching her on their tiny screens placed all their hope and all their trust in her. Isabella knew this was just the beginning. A great battle lay ahead, a war against the people standing before her and the flawed, broken system they so eagerly upheld. But she was ready, because this time, she was no longer alone. What do you think is the best way to handle prejudice when you see it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you're finding this story as gripping as I am, don't forget to hit that like button to show your support. As Isabella Rossi's cold yet powerful declaration echoed through the hotel lobby, an unusual hush fell over the normally bustling space. The guests fell silent, their eyes fixed on her with a mixture of raw anticipation and burning curiosity. In that brief moment, Isabella became the undisputed center of attention, not because of her hidden wealth or status, but because of the sheer, indomitable strength of spirit she displayed in the face of such blatant injustice and prejudice. But that fragile silence shattered almost immediately. Tiffany Vance, who had stood beside Julian all along with an arrogant, self-satisfied air, could no longer contain her seething anger and indignation. To her, Isabella's calm, immovable resistance was a blatant provocation, a direct attack on the core of her fragile, inflated pride. Without waiting for Julian or Caleb to intervene, Tiffany stormed forward. The sharp, angry click of her high heels on the marble floor sounded like hammer blows against an anvil. She planted herself just inches from Isabella, so close that Isabella could feel the heat of her fury radiating from her razor-sharp gaze. "Have you said enough?" Tiffany spat, each word punctuated like a physical blow. "We have politely asked you to leave, yet you stubbornly stand here wasting everyone's time." Before Isabella could even form a response, Tiffany's hand shot out and yanked her arm in a harsh, provocative tug, as if she intended to physically drag her out of the lobby right then and there. The force of the pull made Isabella wince, but she refused to budge, planting her feet firmly. Her eyes locked onto Tiffany's with a glacial calm that silently screamed a warning. "You have just crossed a line from which there is no return." Gasps and murmurs of pure outrage rippled through the lobby. Guests began whispering loudly, voicing their disgust and discomfort. Leo Maxwell and Harper Monroe closed in with their cameras, capturing every ugly, incriminating moment for their rapidly growing live stream audience. Leo's voice trembled with raw anger as he narrated, "Do you see this? This is how the Azure Spire Grand Hotel staff treats their guests, using physical force to try and drive them out of the building. This is assault." Viewers at home exploded in a torrent of fury. The shares of the stream surged like a tidal wave, and thousands of critical, damning comments flooded every social media platform. "Unbelievable. This is beyond unacceptable. A luxury hotel that acts like a bunch of thugs? I will never stay here again." Amid the chaos, a young receptionist named Clara Mae Thompson stood frozen behind the desk, her eyes wide with shock and utter dismay. She had only been working at the Azure Spire for a few months, and had genuinely believed this place embodied the highest standards of courtesy and respect. Now, watching Tiffany's arrogance, Julian's cruelty, and Caleb's spineless complicity, her faith in the hotel's supposed values was crumbling to dust. Shame and a sickening doubt swirled in her mind. Is this really the workplace I believed in? Is this what the Azure Spire truly stands for? Tiffany still had her hand clamped around Isabella's arm, trying to force her forward. Yet Isabella did not flinch. She met Tiffany's hateful gaze and spoke softly, but her words carried the clear conviction of a judge delivering a sentence. "Tiffany, I suggest you release my arm immediately. This will be the biggest mistake of your entire life." Blinded by her own rage, Tiffany sneered back, each syllable dripping with venomous contempt. "My biggest mistake would have been letting scum like you into this hotel in the first place." Harper's live stream captured every single word, fueling an even more furious public backlash. "Outrageous! How dare she humiliate her like that?" "Tiffany Vance, you will pay dearly for this. Your career is over." Through it all, Isabella remained composed, refusing to let Tiffany's physical and verbal abuse shake her. But inside, she knew Tiffany had just crossed the final irrevocable line. She had slipped from simple arrogance into outright aggression, from a petty, career-ending mistake into a potentially criminal disaster. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She realized with chilling certainty that Tiffany's actions weren't just unprofessional. They were a gross, flagrant violation of the hotel's ethics and its most fundamental core values. It was time for her to make a choice. She could remain silent and be complicit, or she could stand up against this horrifying injustice. Clara understood that her decision in the next few seconds could change not only her own fate, but the entire course of everything that was unfolding before her. The lobby had become more than just a standoff between Isabella and Tiffany. It was now the battleground for a much larger fight. A fight between truth and prejudice, between courage and cowardice, between genuine values and the false, ugly assumptions that hid beneath a veneer of luxury. That fragile line awaited someone brave enough to cross it. And Isabella Rossi knew, with a surge of hope, that she was no longer alone. In the tense, suffocating moment that gripped the hotel lobby, Clara May Thompson felt her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She watched Tiffany's manicured hands clench Isabella's arm, her cruel words still echoing in the air like a warning bell. And in that single, clarifying instant, Clara realized she could no longer stand by and watch this grotesque injustice unfold without doing something. Without another moment of hesitation, Clara drew a deep, ragged breath, stepped out from behind the safety of the front desk, and strode directly between Isabella and Tiffany. Her voice trembled, but it rang with a determination that startled everyone around them. "Tiffany, please, stop this at once. Miss Rossi did indeed reserve the penthouse suite. I personally verified her booking myself this morning. We are making a grave, terrible mistake." Every single eye in the lobby turned to Clara in utter astonishment. Tiffany froze, her own eyes widening with fury at this unexpected mutinous challenge from a subordinate. Julian Croft's face contorted from smug satisfaction to pure rage in a heartbeat. He stepped forward, his gaze like a dagger aimed straight at Clara. "Clara, do you have any idea what you're saying? Are you actively trying to ruin this hotel's reputation? If you dare interfere again, I will fire you right here on this spot." Julian's words were ice cold, a naked threat meant to terrify her into silence. But Clara stood her ground. She lifted her chin, her eyes burning with a newfound confidence she had barely known she possessed. "I'm prepared to face whatever consequences come, Mr. Croft, but I cannot stand by and let the truth be buried. What is happening here is wrong. We cannot treat any guest this way." Harper and Leo, still live streaming, moved in closer to capture every detail of this new, heroic development. Leo's voice, now brimming with excitement and unwavering support, spoke into the camera. "You are witnessing real courage, ladies and gentlemen. A hotel employee named Clara May Thompson is defending a guest, even as she's being threatened with dismissal. This is the true spirit of service." Shaken by Clara's unyielding defiance, Tiffany spun on her heel and snapped at her with pure venom. "Clara, how long have you even worked here, that you dare to lecture us? Step aside right now, or you'll pay the exact same price she will." But Clara did not back down. She stood firm, locking eyes with both Tiffany and Julian. "If losing my job is the cost of standing up for what is right, then so be it. But I will never be complicit in discrimination." Meanwhile, Isabella remained utterly composed. Calmly, she retrieved her phone from her jacket pocket and made a call with a deliberate, unnerving slowness. Every action was measured, precise, as if she were following a predetermined plan. Seconds later, a familiar voice answered. It was her personal assistant, Evelyn Reed. "Miss Rossi, this is Evelyn. How can I help you?" Isabella spoke clearly and firmly, her voice loud enough for Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb to hear every single word. "Evelyn, initiate the company's special protocol immediately. I want you to gather all security camera footage from this hotel from the last hour and upload it directly to our internal secure system. Then, notify the legal department. Tell them to prepare the full case. We'll need it today." Evelyn's reply was concise, professional, and decisive. "Understood, ma'am. I'm on it right away." At the sound of Isabella's words, Julian's expression flickered with a brief, almost imperceptible hint of concern before he forced his mask of arrogance back into place. "You think a phone call is going to scare us? Don't be so deluded." But Tiffany couldn't hide her sudden unease. She finally released Isabella's arm and instinctively took a step back, her confidence visibly shaken. Caleb, too, recognized the gravity of the situation. He fell silent, a palpable anxiety creeping into his posture. Harper moved her camera in close to Isabella, capturing this critical, game-changing moment. Her voice quivered with excitement. "Folks, CEO Isabella Rossi has just activated Celestial's special protocol. That means every single ounce of evidence of misconduct by this hotel's management and staff is being preserved as we speak. We are witnessing a major turning point in this story." The lobby's atmosphere grew even more charged as the nearby guests, emboldened by Clara's courage, visibly began to side with Isabella and Clara. Some even stepped forward, creating a subtle protective barrier to show their support and shield the two women who were standing up for justice. In that instant, Clara felt the warmth of courage and the incredible power of solidarity like never before. She turned to Isabella, her eyes shining with gratitude and awe. "Thank you, Miss Rossi. I don't know if I would have had the courage to speak up without seeing your strength." Isabella offered a gentle, reassuring smile and placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. Her voice was sincere and uplifting. "Clara, you are the bravest person in this room today. You've just proven to everyone that courage will always triumph over injustice." Now, Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb truly began to grasp the sheer enormity of their mistake. The line they once thought was thin had become a gaping abyss, and with one more misstep, everything they had ever built could vanish in an instant. But there was no turning back now. Isabella's decision had unleashed a powerful wave of resistance, and the real battle for justice was only just beginning. The air in the hotel lobby grew heavier, more tense and electric than ever before after Isabella's decisive declaration. Julian Croft stood frozen, a flicker of genuine confusion crossing his face, an expression no one in the hotel had ever seen before. His initial, rock-solid confidence was starting to crack as Isabella's words were proving to be terrifyingly true. Every single one of his actions, every one of his vile words, was being carefully and clearly recorded. Across from him, Leo Maxwell never took his eyes off his phone, live streaming every single detail to a global audience. His gaze drifted to the cold, steel safe behind the front desk, the one where Caleb Finch had so brazenly stashed Isabella's credit card. Suddenly, he realized something incredibly important. He swung the camera closer to the safe, adjusting the angle so that the viewers could clearly see the black card resting inside. His voice broke the thick silence with a jolt of pure excitement, broadcasting live for everyone to hear. "Everyone, wait! I just discovered something huge! The credit card that the hotel staff locked in their safe. It's a special VIP card, and it's labeled Owner. That means the woman standing before us, Isabella Rossi, is the owner of this Azure Spire Grand Hotel." Immediately, the lobby erupted in gasps and murmurs of shock and outrage. Julian Croft, Tiffany Vance, and Caleb Finch all went deathly pale, their eyes wide with a dawning, sickening panic, as this shocking truth was exposed to both the on-site guests and the massive online audience. Julian stammered, trying and utterly failing to regain his composure. No way. That has to be a mistake." But his weak words were completely drowned out by the growing chorus of angry whispers. Caleb Finch trembled as he turned to Julian in abject alarm. "Julian, the card really does say Owner. I didn't check it properly." Tiffany, who was normally the most arrogant and composed of the three, now looked absolutely horrified. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth as she leaned against the desk, as if searching for something to steady herself. Yet no one, not a single person, dared to come to her defense. Harper Monroe stepped closer to Isabella, her camera now focused on the hotel owner with an unmistakable respect and profound admiration in her eyes. She took a deep breath and proclaimed for all to hear, "Listen up, everyone! The woman you have just watched be insulted, humiliated, and mistreated by this hotel's own staff is none other than Isabella Rossi, the owner and CEO of Celestial Hospitality, which includes the very Azure Spire Grand Hotel we are all standing in right now." Each word struck like a physical blow to Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb's fragile pride. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still as every single gaze in the lobby fixed on Isabella, who stood tall and resolute at the center of a rapidly intensifying storm of public outrage. The nearby guests began to voice their anger and disbelief, their voices growing louder and more confident. "Unbelievable! How could any staff treat their own CEO like that? I've stayed here countless times, but after witnessing this, I will never come back." Some guests even moved forward to show their solidarity with Isabella and Clara. "Miss Rossi, we are completely on your side. These people must be held accountable for their actions." Faced with the crowd's furious reaction, Julian was utterly at a loss. He scanned the room desperately, searching for support, but found only accusatory, disappointed, and disgusted looks. In a moment of profound weakness, his voice dropped to a pathetic whisper, all his former arrogance gone. "Miss Rossi, I really didn't know who you were. This was all just a small misunderstanding." Isabella cut him off calmly but firmly, her words carrying an undeniable and absolute authority. "A small misunderstanding, Julian? You call insulting and discriminating against a guest who just so happens to be your owner, a small misunderstanding? No, this is not a misunderstanding. This is a symptom of a deep and rotten sickness. And this is exactly why I built this hotel chain in the first place, to ensure that no one ever has to endure what you have put me through today." Her fiery gaze swept over the 3 disgraced staff members as she continued, her voice steady and resolute. "From this moment on, you will face the full and complete consequences of your actions. And I promise you this. Every single guest who has ever been treated unfairly in this establishment will receive the justice they so richly deserve." Instantly, hundreds of messages of support and praise flooded Harper and Leo's live stream. "This is incredible. Now that is a true CEO, a symbol of fairness and courage." "We stand with you, Isabella Rossi. These people must be punished." As Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb stood paralyzed by shock and fear, Clara Mae Thompson looked at Isabella with shining, unadulterated admiration. She realized that her decision today, no matter what the personal cost, had paved the way for the very values that Isabella represented. In that powerful moment, Isabella knew she hadn't just turned the tide in a small, personal battle. She had ignited a true revolution, a revolution to overhaul a flawed and broken system. And she was no longer alone. Isabella's cold, powerful declaration sounded like a death knell for Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb. In that moment, the busy, opulent lobby seemed to freeze. Every eye was fixed on the 3 employees, who just moments before had been brimming with a nauseating arrogance, and now wore only masks of confusion, terror, and despair. Wasting no more time, Isabella turned to Clara and gave her a warm, encouraging nod. Then, she lifted her phone again and spoke to her assistant, her resolve sharper and harder than ever before. "Evelyn, I want you to terminate Julian Croft, Tiffany Vance, and Caleb Finch from all of our personnel and management systems. Effective immediately. Revoke all of their system access right now, and then notify legal to prepare their official dismissal files." Evelyn's clear, decisive reply came through instantly. "Yes, Miss Rossi, I will take care of it right away." At that exact instant, Julian's phone buzzed wildly in his pocket. His system access had been officially and irrevocably revoked. Flustered and panicked, he pulled out his phone only to find a bright red warning message glowing on the screen. "Your system access has been disabled." Julian's face went from ashen white to a blotchy beet red with rage and shock. He looked at Tiffany and Caleb, who were each checking their own phones and realizing with horror that they had suffered the exact same fate. The power they had once wielded so cruelly had vanished in an instant, leaving them with only the guests' disapproving stares and their own simmering, impotent anger. Tiffany trembled, her eyes wide with fear and indignation. She stumbled toward Isabella, her voice now small and desperate. "Miss Rossi, I am so sorry. I didn't know. This was all just a terrible misunderstanding. We never meant for any of this to happen." Isabella regarded her with a gaze as cold and clear as ice. "Tiffany, you have had countless chances to treat me and every other guest with basic human decency, but your arrogance and your prejudice blinded you. Your apologies are now far too little and far too late." Caleb rushed in, his voice quivering, desperately hoping for a sliver of mercy. "We truly regret it, Miss Rossi. Please, just give us a chance to make this right." But Isabella remained completely unmoved. Her gaze was icy, offering no forgiveness, no quarter. Addressing everyone in the lobby and everyone watching live, she announced, "I cannot and will not tolerate a staff that scorns the most fundamental values of hospitality. You are no longer fit to represent celestial hospitality." Julian, completely unmoored and desperate, made one last pathetic plea. "You can't do this to us. I've managed this hotel for years. You can't just destroy our lives over one small incident." Instantly, the guests erupted in fury. One small incident? You call public discrimination and humiliation of a guest a small incident? Unbelievable. I will never return to this hotel if these people remain employed here. Harper and Leo captured every single moment, their live stream flooding with thousands of comments praising Isabella's swift, decisive action. "This is a real CEO, always on the side of what's right. Justice at last. Isabella Rossi is amazing." Overwhelmed by the crowd's furious response, Julian staggered back, completely stunned. Tiffany and Caleb hung their heads in utter, soul-crushing shame. The nearby guests also began to voice their support for Clara May Thompson. "Clara, that was so brave of you to speak up. We are all so proud of you." Clara smiled softly, a genuine warmth flooding her as she realized with absolute certainty that she had done the right thing, no matter the cost. Isabella stepped forward, her voice ringing with a final, absolute authority. "Effective immediately, the three of you are no longer part of the Azure Spire Grand Hotel or the Celestial Hospitality family, and I hope you remember today for the rest of your lives. Remember this as the day that your arrogance and your prejudice cost you everything." A heavy, profound silence fell over the lobby as Isabella finished speaking. The guests stood quietly, their eyes filled with admiration and satisfaction now that justice had finally been served. In that moment, Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb finally understood that they had not only lost their jobs, but they had also lost their reputations and their dignity in front of everyone present. Any further excuses or apologies would be utterly meaningless. Their actions had crossed an irredeemable line, and now they could only stand there and accept the irreversible, devastating consequences. In the suffocating silence that followed Isabella's firm declaration, Clara May Thompson's quiet but resolute voice suddenly cut through the thick tension that filled the lobby. Her eyes shone with a mixture of steely determination and long pent-up disappointment as she fixed her gaze on Julian Croft, who now stood as a broken, hollow shell of his former authority. "Miss Rossi," Clara began, her voice clear, though tinged with a deep and righteous emotion, "I think everyone here needs to know what has really been happening at this hotel for all this time." Every eye in the lobby snapped to Clara. Isabella offered her an encouraging nod, silently urging her to reveal the painful truths she had been forced to carry. Clara drew a deep breath, summoning all of her courage to continue. Julian Croft has discriminated against female guests more times than I can count, especially those who dress plainly or are people of color. And I am speaking from first-hand experience. I've seen it happen with my own eyes, and I've heard his instructions myself. A ripple of astonished, angry whispers swept through the lobby. Julian's face went deathly pale as he stammered in frantic denial. "What are you saying, Clara? Don't you dare spread such outrageous lies about me." Clara did not flinch. Her eyes remained steady as she replied, her voice gaining strength with every word. "I'm not lying, Julian. Every time a woman traveling alone or a guest of color makes a reservation here, you tell us, those people don't bring in real profit, always find an excuse to turn them away." Tiffany and Caleb can confirm this is true, too. At the mention of her name, Tiffany suddenly broke down in tears, her shoulders trembling uncontrollably. The strength and arrogance she had shown just moments ago vanished completely. Through her smeared makeup, she choked out a confession. "It's true, I followed Julian's orders. He told me to judge guests by their appearance, their clothes, and their skin color. At first I refused, but he threatened to fire me if I didn't comply." Tiffany's confession hit the lobby like a slow-moving bomb. Harper and Leo's live stream exploded with furious comments, and their viewer count spiked dramatically into the hundreds of thousands. Caleb stood motionless, his eyes cast down to the floor in abject shame. No words were needed. The ugly truth was clear for all to see. From the crowd of guests gathered nearby, a middle-aged woman stepped forward, her face etched with a familiar anger. "I was treated the same way here just last month. When I came to check in, the front desk told me my reserved room had a technical issue. And then they handed the key to a white male guest right in front of me." A young man spoke up immediately, his voice equally angry. "I was refused service at the hotel bar, even though I was a paying customer. The only explanation I got was, 'Your appearance doesn't meet our standards.'" One by one, other guests began to share their own painful, humiliating experiences. Years of hidden indignities and quiet injustices were now being laid bare for everyone to hear. Julian stood frozen, the crushing weight of their accusations crashing down on him. He attempted a feeble, pathetic defense, his voice stripped of all its former confidence. "You don't understand. I was just trying to maintain this hotel's upscale image. I never meant to hurt anyone." Isabella cut him off in a cold, unwavering tone. "Julian, no upscale image ever justifies prejudice and injustice. Your actions violate the most fundamental core ethics and values of celestial hospitality. No excuse is now or ever will be acceptable." Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks as she added, her voice pained but resolute. "I tried to raise these issues with management before, but Julian silenced me and threatened me every single time. I'm so sorry that I stayed quiet for too long." Isabella placed a comforting hand on Clara's shoulder, her voice soft but strong. "Clara, you have absolutely no reason to apologize. What matters is that you found the courage to speak up today. And because of you, these wrongs will never have the chance to happen again." Harper trained the live stream camera directly on Isabella's face as she addressed the thousands of viewers with heartfelt conviction. "Friends, this is the painful truth that we cannot afford to ignore. Thanks to the incredible bravery of Isabella Rossi and Clara Mae Thompson, these terrible secrets are finally being revealed. Share this live stream far and wide so that no one ever has to suffer in silence like this again." Surrounded by the overwhelming outpouring of accusations and raw outrage, Julian, Tiffany, and Caleb stood utterly defeated. They finally realized that the deep-seated injustices they had hidden for so long had now engulfed them in a pit of public shame from which they would never escape. In that moment, Isabella Rossi felt more strongly than ever the great mission and profound responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. She was no longer merely the owner of a vast hotel empire. She had become a powerful, unwavering voice against injustice and discrimination, and she knew that from this point on, everything would change, and that change would be her true measure of success. The moment Clara's and the guests' heart-wrenching testimonies rang out, a powerful, unifying wave of emotion swept through the lobby. The thick tension of moments before gave way to a palpable sense of unity and shared outrage. These awful, systemic truths could no longer be denied or ignored. Realizing that all control had irrevocably slipped from his grasp, Julian Croft took an unsteady step back, his voice trembling as he barked one last desperate order at the security officers. "Security! Remove these people from the premises immediately!" But before the guards could even move, something truly unexpected and beautiful happened. One by one, the guests began stepping forward, forming a protective human barrier around Isabella Rossi and Clara May Thompson. First came the middle-aged woman who had spoken up, then the young man who had been discriminated against, and then dozens more followed. Every guest in the lobby surged to Isabella's and Clara's side, their eyes burning with a newfound determination and solidarity. "Do you honestly think you still have the power to bully people, Julian?" the middle-aged woman demanded, her fierce gaze locked on him. "We've all seen enough. You will not continue this." An older gentleman approached Isabella calmly but firmly. "Miss Rossi, my wife and I have stayed at this hotel many times, but today, for the first time, we have seen the ugly truth hiding behind this hotel's pristine facade. We stand with you, and I am certain that everyone else here does too." A chorus of affirmations rose across the lobby, a powerful wave of support that was stronger than anything that had come before. Harper and Leo's live stream flooded with comments. "Look at them all standing together. That is the real power of unity. Let them know that we will never tolerate discrimination." Faced with that unwavering, united front, the security team froze, their expressions uncertain. Even they looked embarrassed, realizing that their loyalty now lay with Isabella Rossi, the true leader in the room, not the disgraced former manager. Julian Sanders stood paralyzed, trapped under the guests' furious, accusatory stares. Just minutes ago, he had wielded absolute, unquestioned authority. Now, he saw that true power belongs to the trust and support of one's community, something he had completely and utterly lost. Tiffany Vance, utterly broken, sank to the floor, tears of self-pity streaming down her face. Caleb Mitchell hung his head in a state of hollow resignation, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Surrounded by her protectors, Isabella Rossi stepped forward and surveyed the crowd with a look of deep, profound gratitude. For the first time, she truly felt the immense strength of strangers bound together by a shared principle of human decency. When she spoke, her voice rang out with an unwavering conviction that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "Discrimination will never be allowed under this roof again." Her words echoed through the hotel like an unbreakable vow. Thunderous applause erupted, eyes glistened with pride, and the social media shares of the live stream spiked into the millions. This is the power of solidarity, a truly historic moment. Isabella Rossi stood for us, and we stood for her. Harper brought her camera in close to Isabella's resolute face. "Everyone, this is the true strength of unity. We have just witnessed history. Isabella Rossi rose for all of us, and we all rose with her." Julian made one last shaky plea. You don't understand. I never meant—" But the crowd completely drowned him out with shouts of, "That's enough!" We're done with your pathetic excuses. We don't want to hear another single word from you." Isabella gently raised her hand, calling for quiet. As the lobby hushed, she fixed Julian with a steady, penetrating gaze and declared, "Julian Croft, you made the grave mistake of believing that your petty power could somehow shield you from truth and justice. Today, these people have shown you that true power lies in unity and in standing up for what is right." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the guests who still stood protectively around her. Her tone softened, but her resolve remained ironclad. "From this day forward, I promise you, this place will always stand for fairness, for equality, and for respect. This is not just my pledge to you. This is the solemn commitment of all of Celestial Hospitality." Thunderous applause and cheers answered her words. In that moment, everyone in the lobby felt that they had become part of something much bigger than themselves. They weren't just defending Isabella. They were standing up for themselves and for everyone who had ever suffered an injustice. And in Isabella's eyes, there shone nothing but profound gratitude and an unshakable, fierce determination to ensure that nothing like this could ever happen again. As the thunderous applause and cheers from the guests began to subside, Isabella Rossi drew in a deep breath, her eyes burning with a steely, forward-looking resolve. She understood that although this battle had been won in a spectacular and public fashion, the real journey, the journey to overhaul the entire system, lay ahead, and it would be long and arduous. Turning to Clara May Thompson, who was still standing beside her, her face alight with pride and raw emotion, Isabella placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. She announced, for all the guests and the thousands watching the live stream to hear, "Effective immediately, I am appointing Clara May Thompson as the new Director of Guest Services at the Azure Spire Grand Hotel. Clara has demonstrated undeniable courage, integrity, and an unwavering dedication to our guests. She absolutely deserves this position." Clara's face broke into a beaming smile of pure joy and utter surprise, her eyes sparkling like never before. Warm, heartfelt applause rippled through the lobby. Harper trained her camera on Clara and called out proudly into the live stream, "You are witnessing a wonderful and well-deserved transformation. This is proof that bravery and honesty truly are rewarded." Amid the continuing excitement, Isabella spoke into her phone to her assistant, Evelyn, who had remained on the line the entire time. "Evelyn, I want you to notify the entire Celestial Hospitality Network that we will begin a series of comprehensive reforms starting today. I want a thorough and complete audit of every single hotel in our chain, nationwide. Any instance of discrimination or any attempt at a cover-up must be dealt with swiftly, transparently, and with the utmost severity." "Understood, Miss Rossi." Evelyn's voice rang out with an equal determination. "I will enact it right away." At that moment, Julian Croft spoke up weakly from behind Isabella, his voice trembling with desperation as he made one last pathetic plea. "You can't do this, Isabella." "Do. I was just following orders from above. I'm not the only one to blame for this." Isabella spun on him, her gaze as cold as a frozen lake. "What did you just say, Julian? Who gave you these orders?" Julian, now completely stripped of his arrogance, blurted out everything he knew, hoping to somehow lessen his own culpability. "It was Richard Sterling, our former regional director. He kept insisting that we had to uphold the hotel's luxury image at all costs, and to quietly deal with any guests who didn't meet those arbitrary standards." The lobby erupted in a new wave of shocked murmurs. Isabella's brow darkened as she realized the true gravity of this new information. The problem, the sickness, extended far beyond this one hotel. It had infected the senior leadership of Celestial Hospitality itself. Clara leaned in close, her voice tinged with a new worry. "Miss Rossi, If Julian is telling the truth, this could be affecting many of our hotels. We have to act immediately. Isabella nodded firmly, her eyes blazing with resolve. You're right, Clara. No one can hide behind their position or their power. Anyone, no matter their rank, who is implicated in discrimination or ethical violations must be held accountable, by the law and by our guests. She turned back to her phone, her voice harder than ever before, as she issued her next order to Evelyn. Evelyn, contact our legal department at once. I want you to launch a full and unrestricted investigation into Richard Sterling and any other senior executives who may have been involved. Bring everything out into the open, and if there is clear evidence of wrongdoing, I want full legal action to follow. There will be no exceptions. Absolutely, Miss Rossi. I will relay the message immediately, Evelyn responded, without a moment's hesitation. Harper and Leo's live streams flooded with new messages of support and admiration from viewers all across the nation. This is incredible. This is exactly the kind of leadership we need. Isabella Rossi proves she's not only strong, but she is relentless in her pursuit of true justice. The atmosphere in the lobby crackled with a mixture of tension and exhilarating hope. Isabella surveyed the faces around her, fully aware of the immense responsibility that now rested squarely on her shoulders. But she knew, with every fiber of her being, that she was not alone. The guests surrounding her, alongside Clara, Harper, Leo, and the countless online supporters, all stood with her in this challenging, monumental undertaking. Stepping forward one last time, Isabella's voice rang out, strong and resolute. Today, we have witnessed painful truths, but we have also been given an opportunity for profound and lasting change. I promise every single one of you that Celestial Hospitality will become a symbol of fairness, equality, and absolute respect for every single guest. We will not only transform this hotel, but we will transform our entire chain, and if necessary, we will change this entire industry. A final triumphant wave of applause and cheers swept through the lobby. In that moment, everyone knew that they had witnessed history in the making, a moment where justice and truth overcame discrimination and prejudice. And Isabella Rossi, standing at the center of it all, was now more than just the CEO of a major hotel group. She was the leader of a comprehensive moral reform, guiding the way toward a fairer, brighter, and more compassionate future. Immediately after Isabella's powerful declarations, the Azure Spire's lobby was plunged into a solemn, reflective silence. Every guest, every staff member, and the thousands of people still watching the live stream felt that they were witnessing a truly historic moment. A turning point not only for the Azure Spire Grand Hotel itself, but for the entire Celestial Hospitality Group, and, more broadly, for the hotel industry as a whole. Isabella Rossi swept a determined gaze around the room, her heart pounding with each beat. Every face before her shone with a newfound belief and high expectations, reminding her of the immense responsibility she now carried. Drawing in a deep, centering breath, Isabella spoke in a clear, gentle voice that nevertheless brimmed with an uncommon strength and resolve. Today, we have all risen up to stand against injustice and prejudice, but this is only the first step on the long path to the change we all yearn for. From this moment forward, I hereby officially announce a comprehensive restructuring across the entire Celestial Hospitality Group. Every eye was fixed intently on Isabella, and each word she spoke carried the weight of absolute sincerity and unwavering determination. We will immediately implement rigorous new policies on fairness, transparency, and ethical conduct throughout our entire system. Every single employee, from the highest executive to the newest staff member, will undergo mandatory, intensive training on equality, diversity, and inclusion. All customer complaints will be handled with complete transparency and swift, decisive action. Never again will painful experiences like those of the past have the chance to recur under my watch." The guests erupted into enthusiastic applause, their eyes reflecting a profound faith in every word she spoke. Harper moved the live stream camera closer to Isabella, her voice trembling with emotion. "Dear friends, we are witnessing a historic moment in which Isabella Rossi and Celestial Hospitality are setting new, higher standards for the entire hotel industry. Today is the day that respect and equality truly rise to the top." Isabella gently raised her hand to quiet the crowd, and in an even more resonant tone, she shared a message that deeply moved everyone listening. True hospitality does not begin with a phony, practiced smile. It begins with genuine, heartfelt respect for every single individual. That is something I learned all too well in the days when I was a young woman sleeping in a cold car after being refused service. And that is precisely why I built Celestial Hospitality, to ensure that no one ever has to endure that kind of loneliness and abandonment ever again. As Isabella finished speaking, a thunderous round of applause erupted and continued unabated. More than a few of the guests were moved to tears by her heartfelt, vulnerable words. Clara May Thompson, standing beside Isabella, could not hold back her own tears. She understood that from this moment on, her duty was not only to serve customers, but to be a guardian of the core values that Isabella represented. Suddenly, from the back of the crowd, an elderly woman stepped forward toward Isabella, her eyes brimming with emotion, her voice trembling with sincerity. "Miss Rossi, I just want to thank you. I have stayed in many hotels in my lifetime, but I have never felt as heard, as seen, and as respected as I do today. What you have done here has given me hope that there is still so much good left in this world." Those words touched Isabella deeply. She took the woman's hand in both of hers and replied, her own voice filled with gratitude. "No, I am the one who must thank you. It is thanks to people like you, those who are brave enough to stand up and speak the truth, that we can all work together to build a better future." At that moment on Harper and Leo's live stream, thousands of comments poured in, expressing deep admiration and gratitude. Isabella Rossi has inspired us all on how to stand up against injustice. I will always support Celestial Hospitality, the place where true fairness is valued. Amid the powerful wave of emotion, Isabella stepped into the center of the lobby, turned towards the cameras and everyone watching, and announced once more in a resolute voice, "Remember, today is not the end. This is the beginning of a revolution for respect and equality in the hotel industry and beyond, in our entire community. I promise you all that Celestial Hospitality will never back down from this journey." The guests and staff alike rose to their feet, clapping and cheering loudly, the sound echoing through every corner of the magnificent lobby. Even the newly arrived front desk attendants behind the counter were moved to stand and applaud enthusiastically, showing their deep solidarity with Isabella's message. Surveying the crowd, Isabella felt an unprecedented sense of happiness and profound pride. The Azure Spire was no longer just a place of luxury lodging. It had become the living embodiment of the highest values of fairness, transparency, and genuine respect among people. And Isabella Rossi understood that the challenging journey ahead would hold many obstacles, but she was not alone. Thousands of people, guests, staff, and the wider community stood with her. Together they were not just building a hotel brand, they were building a more just, more compassionate, and more hopeful world. With that fierce faith and unwavering determination, Isabella cast her proud gaze toward the future, smiled, and affirmed once more to everyone, "We will succeed, and we will change this world together. Thank you for joining Isabella Rossi on this emotional and inspiring journey. Through her story, we have seen that no matter the circumstances, courage, unity, and the determination to uphold justice will always triumph. Remember, every small act against injustice can spark significant, meaningful change in all our lives. What would you do if you witnessed an act of injustice like the one in this story today? Share your thoughts and your own experiences in the comments below. And please don't forget to hit that like button, share this video far and wide, and subscribe to the channel to receive more meaningful and inspiring stories just like this one. We'll see you in the next video.